The whole place has been ransacked, things stolen, things destroyed, a legacy of a lifetime. It's just been treated with so much disrespect, and I can't believe what I'm here today seeing. It's just so sad. It's just the end, basically, of the industrial age. And I'd got a phone call from Alan McEwen, a friend of Fred's, and he basically said he'd been past the house, he'd visited the grave on that Saturday and seen things in the garden which he considered, in his opinion, shouldn't have been there, such as like an old lamp, oil lamp, a miner's lamp, things of that nature. And he said I better go back and find out what's happening. So I took my mum back to Blackpool and picked my son up, came back to Bolton, opened the front door, and sure enough, everything was totally ransacked. They'd gone through all the drawers, all the cupboards, everything had been pulled out. Things, not particularly in the house destroyed, but certainly they'd spent a lot of time in there looking through. I'd say maybe gone back twice and had another look, because they'd even been in the loft, believe it or not. I was very much hoping that this place would be turned into a heritage centre when all the estate matters were settled. I would have liked to seen everything preserved. In my opinion, in an ideal world, all this out the sheds, if it couldn't have been held here in situ, would have been taken to somewhere like Manchester Science Museum, preserved for posterity, or anywhere really where they had the space. Because as you say, hallowed ground, people had come far and wide to see this. And now it's just a distant memory of Fred with all his lovely things destroyed. Very sad. Well, we're here on Boxing Day today to see that the engines are preserved. That means taking them away on a low loader so they can't be subject to any more vandalism, and that's something which must be done very, very quickly. I think if there's any cloud at all which has got a silver lining in this respect, it's that these engines haven't been totally damaged and stripped of all the brass work. You know, we've sustained damage to Betsy, one of the plaques has been taken, but you know, I'm just relieved and pleased that we can move the engines today, and at least they'll be safe. Don't know what'll happen to the rest of it. Short of 24-hour security, there's not a lot we can do. Just hope and pray that they grow tired and don't keep coming back.
I'm coming to help in any capacity I can with moving Fred's dear old engines to somewhere where they're going to be safe and they can be not fiddled with and pieces pinched off them by these characters who keep coming in here. For the past week, every single day, possibly more than once, Fred's place has been visited by people that we don't really know whether they're pinching brass for scrap or for souvenirs, but every day something is pinched and moved. And so it's obvious we've got to get these engines away from here, and I've just something's just driven me to ring everybody up, all of the family and the executor of the will, because we've just got to do something. We can't just keep waiting for these solicitors and having time going by, because even in 1 week of these people coming here, They've started damaging Betsy, taking the big Flintshire County Council brass plate, that's disappeared, which is, everybody's seen this plate, and it's part of the engine obviously, and even if it's replaced, it's not going to be the original one that Fred restored all them years ago. So it's it's a very sad time. It's very sad to see the engines going, obviously, and it's very sad that they're not going to go under their own steam, because Fred didn't have time to retube the boiler on Betsy. He was more interested in getting the tractor finished and working with his coal mine, and so Betsy really has not had the attention that Fred would have liked to have given it in the last years of his life. So we can't steam it away, it's got to be towed up with a tractor, and the biggest job with that is we've got to get it out the shed, and we've got to turn it round and pull it out backwards, because we can't pull it with the front forks in case we snap them. And it's bloody awful, because I've known these engines since 1972, or the roller anyway, since I was 12 years old, and I've known all the family, all the wives, all the children, and it's horrible for everybody. It's not just me and the family, it's all the enthusiasts and the fans, and it's just so unfair, so very, very unfair. But I'm sure without a doubt this has been the last time that this engine will be here. The roller's been here since 1968. That was the time Fred first bought the roller here. When he got it in 1967, he kept it on a little bit of wasteland on Manchester Road where the Greyhound racing track was. And the very first thing he did at this house was make some gates at the top of the road and dig a few trees out and some roots and make this driveway up to the drive.
It's Boxing Day, it's around 9 o'clock and it's freezing cold. Most self-respecting people are at home, ensconced around the table waiting for the family to arrive for the midday meal. It's a very sad occasion because we're here to remove Fred Dibnah's famous collection of steam engines and other artefacts. Just a few days earlier, Christine, that's my wife, and I, were nearby. We'd visited Fred's grave and we decided we'd just come round to the front of Park Cottage, and out of the car we got. I strolled along the front where we parked the car by the railings to the front of the cottage. Very sad, very forlorn. Looking through the fence I noticed that there were a miner's lamp, and this was the miner's lamp I recognised as belonging to Fred, and Fred had it and lovingly restored it and polished it on his mantel shelf for many years. And there were also a candle sconce and one or two other articles. Within a second or two, the penny dropped that, by golly, there must have been a burglary. So without further ado, I telephoned Michael Webber, another close friend and a very dear old friend of Fred's, who was very shocked, obviously very shocked. And then a series of events led up to him getting in touch with Sheila Dibnah, which has resulted in this morning's business here at Radcliffe Road. This is the famous old Land Rover, that's the ubiquitous machine. Been in my yard many times, been all over the country. Fred loved this machine. He weren't the best driver of it, I hasten to add, in the world. He didn't like internal combustion engines, but it were a tremendous, hard-working workhorse. And look at Fred's particular style of scaffolding on top of the vehicle itself. This was for carrying his tons and tons and tons weight of ladders and his ropes and blocks and tackle and everything else. We've had to bring in a specialist team. We've got Johnny Johnson of Johnson's from the Banks near Southport, and they're famous at being heavy recovery specialists of heavy goods vehicles and related machinery. They've got all the necessary winches, trailers, tractors, loaders and similar equipment. And there's also Alan Atkinson, an old friend of Fred's, with his tractor unit and his long trailer. And this will be the first time that the two steam engines have been on a wagon trailer together. Alan Atkinson were a close friend of Fred, and indeed he carried Fred's engine, the steam tractor, all around Britain during the making of the BBC film Made in Britain that Fred portrayed as magnificently as he did. I found it very sad surveying this scene. It's a tragedy. Fred was a very close and dear friend of mine. He was very inspirational to me and inspirational to many others. This site was his life. This back garden, as he referred to it, was his all-encompassing passion. He built this wonderful collection of steam vehicles and buildings and plant and equipment for over a period of perhaps 30 odd years. Less than 500 yards from here, across the river, Fred lies in his grave. And he'd be incensed with fury if he saw what was happening today with the breakup of this magnificent collection. The last time this bonny little Aveling engine saw the light of day was the sad occasion of Fred's funeral in November 2004. This hauling process is not as easy as it looks. This is due to the layout of the ramp behind Fred's house. It's a very steep incline ramp upwards. The slippery surface of the roadway underfoot. This is due to fallen leaves. The rear end of the tractor is having to use its hydraulic stabilising gear to get a good solid purchase prior to engaging the winch itself to haul the steam tractor right to the back of the tractor itself. There's leaves and moss and mould and dead twigs underfoot, and it's like the proverbial ice rink. This is a particularly sad and poignant scene because I like to see an engine hard at work, working hard against this incline under its own steam power, not being hauled by the power from an internal combustion engine, and Fred would have agreed there wholeheartedly. These are experts. They're not rushing and flying around. They're taking everything nice and steady, because after all, these are indeed the crown jewels of the steam world. The lads are busily engaged securing the tow bar to the rear end of the steam tractor, which in turn is to be coupled to Johnson's loader, which is going to take up to the rear. This is going to act as a safety procedure, and this is in the event, due to the slippery underfoot conditions, of the loads themselves starting to slide backwards down the treacherous slope. This is a precise operation. These guys are experts. You've obviously got to keep your fingers out of the way. The bar is offered into the clevis and the pin is placed in, and it looks a relatively simple operation, but there's a lot of expertise and timing goes into that. Fred promised David Hall that he would get the steam tractor up and running, and this in fact was prior to his diagnosis from the hospital of his terminal illness. And notwithstanding that illness, he nevertheless, being the man he were, a true man, a true northern man full of grit, he got stuck in and he actually completed the tractor, made an absolutely stupendous and astonishing job of getting that up and running, particularly so when he was so desperately ill. The steam tractor has now been safely delivered onto the surface of the road, with the denuded branches of the trees in the background forming an atmospheric effect. Normally, anything to do with Fred would bring in mass crowds, but today it's just the team and perhaps one or two spectators. I met Fred at a mill at Worsley in the west part of Manchester in 1981 while I were engaged on work and he were there also. And we just hit it off, and we realised quickly that we shared a passion for all aspects of engineering. I greatly admired Fred as a steeplejack, and in turn he admired me as a boilermaker, and we shared many interests on a regular basis and enjoyed chatting together. As a master boilermaker, I used to compliment Fred on his expertise in all aspects of boilermaking, whether it be flanging plate, whether it be putting patches in, and particularly so when it comes to riveting, because he was an absolute master at the art. And it is an art, and I've seen many boilermakers throughout the years who could not put down a rivet like Fred Dibnah could. Fred never got round to actually naming this engine. He just described it as the steam tractor, or the Aveling steam tractor, the racehorse. He always wanted it to do 16 miles an hour. Whether it got to that, we don't know, because of course when he first commissioned it and put it onto the road, he had troubles with its steaming, and that was mainly due to the valve gear. And at the time, he was greatly concerned about a number of very small, almost insignificant rivet leakages. And because, for example, the boiler was painted black, the leakage from the rivet stood out quite starkly. And this concerned Fred, particularly when he was tired and particularly when he was in pain. And I can recall an occasion when perhaps he'd been on the road and one or two people had noticed, bystanders, didn't mean any harm by it whatsoever. They were somewhat bemused by these leaks, but to Fred, it was a real put down. And I can recall being down in Herefordshire on a job, and my telephone rang one Friday, and it was Fred. And they were really, really, really saddened and downcast. People had been, he said, wittering over the state of health of his riveting. And so I give him some advice on how to stop the leakage. Whether he took it all the way I put it, I don't know. But it did, most of the leaks did stop.
Yeah.
These are just a few of the items that have been recovered from the riverbank to the rear of Fred's house. I don't think we'll ever know who the thieves actually were. But if they ever are caught, then they want the full weight of the law to come down upon them. It's a sad reflection of modern British society that a man's home is no longer sacrosanct. Michael Webber was saying earlier how they'd have to take the roller up the ramp backwards. The team from Johnson's have come up with another plan, using a wide and long nylon strop, which they've passed around the front headstock above the roller. And this will enable the pulling tractor, the hauling tractor, to haul Betsy up the severe incline of the ramp much, much safely.
So we haven't got a lot of room.
We'll manage. Biggest problem is now it's coming downhill and it's not on the bar.
No.
So you're going to have to hold it up brake, you know what I mean?
And the block.
Yeah, yeah.
And the steering as well, going around that tree.
Presumably there's a good brake up flywheel, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Oh, no, you're not in gear, are you? No,
Gear.
no, sorry, no. No.
Went fairly smoothly with that one, didn't it, Alan?
Yeah, a lot more weight in this one, obviously, and these leaves don't help with traction, you know what I mean? Very slippy, so. But you could see it sliding to one side when he went round that corner, and that's what we're frightened of, pulling it at an angle.
It's a different kettle of fish altogether with the roller, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's going to be. We've got the right man here, Johnson, so. If he can't do it, nobody can.
How do you think that first one went?
Very well. Good as could be expected considering the conditions.
How bad are the conditions?
It's just a bit slippy with all the greenery about and, you know, the dead leaves and everything.
How do you think the crew should have?
Well, they're doing a great job. It's sad under the circumstances, but of course we're in capable hands, and this is the right thing to do. So if this word is pleased about it, yeah, I'm delighted they're being saved.
I noticed that they keep finding bits and pieces that's been nicked off the engine.
Yeah, that tells me I think it's children use somebody coming in. It's people taking things and they don't really know what the value is of stuff, which I'm pleased they're finding bits and pieces anyway, obviously. So I'm going to go down for a recce in a minute as well once I've seen the traction engines move.
I can't steer this round here, so we want you to stand on this chain here. Yeah. Hold on to something. Just bounce on it. Yeah. Help me to steer it round this corner. Round. And then you might have to do it on the other side.
Should have hard hat on for that. And gloves.
The guy on the right hand side is jumping up and down on the steering chains, and this makes it considerably easier to steer. Michael Webber is attempting to steer this in a very short space. Very difficult job to do. But with a guy diving up and down on that chain, it just allows the rollers to turn at the angle that is required. And out she comes. And it's a magnificent achievement. Extricating the roller out of the shed was one thing, but the next, of course, is to get it round the great big stubborn ash tree and then to align it at the bottom of the ramp in readiness for hauling it up. The roller was originally named by Fred Allison after his first wife. However, after the divorce, he rechristened it Betsy after his mother, because in Fred's own words, mothers were always constant and utterly reliable. Next to Sheila is Fred's former right-hand man and cohort, great friend of Fred. Hadn't known Fred very long, perhaps 3 or 4 years, but an absolute superb friend to him. And particularly when he were ill. Obviously he's feeling the strain of the day. You could tell in his face that, he's a very, very sad man, and rightly so, we all are. When the first engine was pulled out of the shed, it was considered to be an easy task. Now this was something different, attempting the roller, considerably heavier than the light steam tractor, and very numb to negotiate and manoeuvre around the confines of the yard. There were an awkward ash tree to get round, and then the long haul up the ramp before getting out through the gateway onto the road itself. So considerable effort and a certain amount of concern would have to be involved. What you can see is the tractor being pulled back towards the roller due to the large weight of the roller itself. You can see the sadness etched into Michael Webber's face, because Michael has been connected with Betsy since he was a boy of about 12 years of age. You can clearly see that Betsy is not going to give up. without a profound battle, making life difficult for the modern tractor, but nevertheless, undeterred, Johnny Johnson and his team have it to do, and they will definitely do it. When Michael Webber arrived in the yard earlier this morning, he attempted to fill Betsy's tender with water, and his idea was then to steam her, and it would have been a magnificent sight. Regrettably, the tubes are badly corroded, and therefore it was unable to carry out the steaming procedure.
So what are they doing here then, Alan?
We're going to tie it round tree. We've got a bad pulling angle here, so we're going to put it round bottom at tree through a snatch block to pull at right angle. We're pulling it sideways, unfortunately. So fortunately we have a tree there.
Oh, this way. You at that end.